The emerald light of the Grand Council chamber pulsed with a sickening rhythm, a heartbeat of dread echoing through the vast space. Crystalline pillars, taller than any mountain on Xylos, bore the weight of 1,000 star systems, each reflecting the shimmering unease that clung to the air like a noxious gas. Within the central nexus, the counselors of the Xylar hegemony, their forms shifting and ethereal, their minds a kaleidoscope of fear and uncertainty, prepared for the inevitable. The whispers had become a roar, the rumors solidified into cold, hard reality. The Deathworlders had sent a ship, not a diplomatic vessel, not a transport of traders, a warship. A vessel designed for nothing but destruction, a testament to the primal, untamed fury that simmered beneath the Deathworlders' placid facade. Council Speaker Valka, her form flickering with a particularly violent shade of cerulean, felt the familiar prickle of anxiety against her scales. She had known this day would come, had foreseen the inevitable confrontation. But knowing and preparing were two very different things. Her thoughts, as always, were fractured by the psychic weight of the council. Each counselor contributed to a cacophony of fear, speculation, and nascent warmongering. "They are a mistake," Councilman Zarkos, a being of solid obsidian, intoned, his voice a grinding rasp that scraped against the fragile peace. "A biological aberration, a threat to all we hold sacred." His words, though seemingly reasonable, were laced with a visceral fear, a primal terror that echoed through the collective consciousness. Valka suppressed a sigh. Zarkos' paranoia was legendary, his rigid adherence to tradition a constant thorn in the side of progress. He saw threat everywhere, and now he had the perfect embodiment of his fears. The council chamber's observation windows, gigantic portals into the void, offered a chilling view of the encroaching human vessel. It was a silhouette, a predatory blackness against the nebulae. Its presence, a silent harbinger of violence, a stark reminder of the Deathworlders' capabilities. Their technology, they had learned through laborious, piecemeal analysis, was crude yet effective, brutal yet efficient. They had mastered the art of war, of inflicting pain and suffering as a form of art. Each flicker of the vessel's running lights was an insult, a boast of their capacity for annihilation. "Their motives are unclear," Councilwoman Lyra, a being of pure, incandescent light, countered, her voice ringing with measured precision. "We have insufficient data to determine their intent. We must proceed with caution." Lyra, ever the pragmatist, was a counterpoint to Zarkos' pessimism, a voice of reason in the storm. Her measured tones, however, were becoming increasingly drowned out by the rising tide of fear. The reports were damning. Sensory arrays had detected a high-energy signature emanating from the human vessel, a pattern unlike anything the Xylar had encountered. It was a symphony of destruction, an overture of death, a promise of devastation. Even the most seasoned tacticians, the ones who had navigated millennia of galactic conflict, found themselves scrambling for answers, their minds overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the potential threat. The vessel's design, leaked by a disgruntled, cowardly spy, was an abomination. Angles, sharp edges, and a complete disregard for aesthetic refinement, it was a testament to the Deathworlders' lack of artistry and their obsession with utilitarian efficiency. The ship itself was a weapon, and its mere presence constituted an act of aggression. Valka, as the speaker, bore the brunt of the council's anxieties. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, the echoes of countless previous conflicts threatening to suffocate her. She closed her visual sensors for a moment, letting the swirling chaos of the council recede. She had spent centuries studying the Deathworlders, the enigmatic humans, the ones whose history was a chronicle of continuous violence, whose biology a constant battleground. She knew their strengths. She also knew their weaknesses, and against all odds she knew their potential. "The sensor readings," Zarkos began, his voice laced with triumph, "confirm the worst. This vessel is designed for one purpose, conquest." He turned, his obsidian form casting a long, ominous shadow across the chamber. "We must mobilize our fleets, prepare for war." A murmur of assent rippled through the council. The tide had turned, the fear had won. Valka felt a pang of despair. The cycle of violence, she knew, was a difficult one to break. It had ensnared species far older and wiser than the Deathworlders. Lyra, however, remained unmoved. "We do not have sufficient information to initiate a first strike," she countered, her voice clear and strong. "Such an action would be a violation of the Galactic Accords. We must attempt to establish communication." The suggestion was met why. A chorus of dissenting whispers. The Accords in this moment seemed like a quaint, idealistic relic, a fragile shield against the overwhelming tide of reality, but Lyra persisted. "We must exhaust all diplomatic avenues before resorting to violence," she argued, her voice gaining strength. The consequences of war are too catastrophic to ignore. Her plea hung in the air, a lone, hopeful spark against the gathering storm. Valka considered the situation. War was not the answer, not if it could be avoided. The price of conflict, the loss of life, the destruction of resources was too high to bear. But how could one possibly reason with a species whose history was a testament to endless conflict? How could one persuade them to lay down their weapons, to seek common ground, to choose peace over destruction? Her internal conflict mirrored the turmoil within the council. She closed her visual sensors again and took a moment to breathe. The moment, she hoped, would bring clarity. "I agree with Lyra," Valka announced, her voice resonating with authority. "We will attempt to communicate. We will send a delegation. We will try to understand their intentions." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The decision to risk the lives of emissaries was a bold one, bordering on the reckless, but Valka stood firm. A tremor of uncertainty passed through the council. Sending a delegation to a vessel of such unknown capabilities was a dangerous proposition. It was an act of faith, a desperate gamble in the face of annihilation. But the alternative, a preemptive strike, was a descent into a war of unimaginable proportions. The council had long observed the humans' war-like capacity. They were not to be trifled with. The selection of the delegation was a delicate, tortuous process. Valka insisted on including representatives from various fields: diplomats, scientists, linguists, tacticians. And against the wishes of Zarkos, she included a specialist in Deathworlder psychology. The idea of understanding the Deathworlders was anathema to Zarkos and his followers, who believed that the species was nothing more than an embodiment of pure, unadulterated evil. But Valka believed that understanding was the first step towards resolution. "We must choose wisely," Valka stated to the council. "Every member of this delegation must be capable of understanding the human mind. Their history must be known, their habits, their customs. We must prepare them for the worst." Once the delegates were chosen, a vessel, unarmed and cloaked in advanced shielding, was prepared for departure. It was a vessel of peace, a fragile vessel of hope. Valka watched, her crystalline form vibrating with a mixture of fear and anticipation, as the vessel vanished into the void, a tiny speck of light against the looming darkness of the human warship. The journey to the human vessel, she knew, would be perilous, but the future of the Xylar hegemony, and perhaps of the galaxy itself, hinged on its outcome. As the diplomatic vessel approached the Deathworlder vessel, a silence of the dead settled over the council chamber. The observation windows offered a clear view of the two vessels, one a symbol of hope, the other of impending doom, positioned in stark contrast to one another. The diplomatic vessel, a sleek and elegant craft, was dwarfed by the massive warship, a testament to the Deathworlders' priorities. Then, from the vast warship, a signal. The signal, transmitted in a language the Xylar had not yet deciphered, was a promise of greeting. Inside the diplomatic vessel, Ilara, the lead diplomat, a being of pure light, felt the tremor of excitement run through her. They had been prepared for anything: hostility, aggression, silence. But a greeting, however cautious, was the most promising start. "Prepare a response," she instructed her team, her voice steady and calm. "Attempt to establish communication." The team of scientists and linguists worked frantically, their minds racing to decipher the cryptic message. The initial translation was limited, but the core essence was clear: welcome. The anticipation was overwhelming. The first communication with the Deathworlders, the beginning of a conversation that could determine the fate of star systems. The council chamber, now alive with tension, watched as the diplomatic vessel initiated contact. A holographic image of a figure clad in a simple uniform, a human with a face like sculpted stone, appeared on the viewing screen. His eyes, dark and unreadable, stared out at them with an unnerving intensity. "Greetings," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that had a peculiar ring. "We are the crew of the Dauntless. We are pleased to welcome you." Ilara, following protocols, began her diplomatic address, offering greetings and assurances. The image of the human remained unchanged, his face devoid of emotion. But then, to the shock of the council, the human offered a gesture, a simple raising of a hand. A sign of respect and openness. This small act, so common among many species, was alien in the context of the Deathworlders' reputation. The human's words continued, calm and collected, their tone betraying nothing. "We understand your concerns," he said. "We know our reputation, but we come not as conquerors, we come as observers." The council collectively stiffened. Observers, the implication was unsettling. "We are here to study your culture, your technology, your history. The human continued, his gaze unwavering. We seek only knowledge. Zarkos let out a low growl of displeasure, but Lyra remained calm. This human spoke of knowledge, a resource the Xyler valued above all. His words offered the promise of peaceful interaction. The ship and the Deathworlders within, however, were still a threat. The diplomatic negotiations continued, a series of calculated exchanges. The Deathworlders, it turned out, were fascinated by the Xyler's unique biology and their ability to manipulate light and energy. In return, they offered the Xyler glimpses into their technology, crude but undeniably powerful. The Council watched, their fears slowly, grudgingly beginning to subside. The warship, once a symbol of fear, became a vessel of curiosity. Weeks passed into months. The two species engaged in an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. The Deathworlders, far from being the ruthless conquerors they had been portrayed as, revealed themselves to be meticulous researchers driven by a thirst for understanding. They shared their understanding of the universe, their history, their philosophical debates. The Xyler learned of human concepts of morality, compassion, and duty. The humans, in turn, learned of the Xyler's intricate understanding of the universe. The Dauntless was more than a warship. It was a mobile research facility, a collection of experts in various fields. And its crew, far from being bloodthirsty warriors, were, for the most part, dedicated scientists, engineers, and historians. The human in charge, Captain Eva Rostova, had emerged as the primary contact, and to the surprise of the Council, she demonstrated an impressive level of diplomatic skill. She was the one who steered the ship's course. One day, Captain Rostova requested a private meeting with the Council. The request was granted, and Rostova, along with a select team, beamed aboard the Council chamber. The Xyler, accustomed to the ethereal, shifting forms of their own kind, were initially taken aback by the physical presence of the humans. They were surprisingly fragile-looking, their bodies composed of soft flesh and bone. The Council members had to reframe their understandings of the physical beings they were about to encounter. Rostova and her team stood before the Council, their expressions unreadable. "We have observed your civilization," Rostova began, her voice steady and clear. "We have studied your technology, your culture, your history." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "And we have reached a conclusion." A collective intake of breath rippled through the Council. The words hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. What would they say? Did they intend to conquer, to dominate, or something more sinister? "You have underestimated yourselves," Rostova stated, her gaze sweeping across the Council. Her words were a surprise, a twist in their expectations. The humans had not come to condemn, but to praise. "You believe yourselves to be a peaceful species dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, but you are far more than that." The Council, stunned, could only manage silence. "You have faced countless threats, challenges, and conflicts, yet you have endured," Rostova continued. "You have built a civilization that has spanned countless star systems, a society that values intelligence and compassion." The Council began to murmur, the implications of Rostova's words slowly dawning upon them. Had they really underestimated themselves? "You possess a quality that we on our world have often struggled to cultivate," Rostova said, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "You possess hope." The Council was silent. Hope. The concept had been all but forgotten by some, a relic of a bygone age. "We believe," Rostova continued, "that the future of the galaxy rests not on the strength of our weapons, but on the strength of our understanding." She turned to her team, and a series of figures stepped forward, each carrying a device. "We have developed a technology that we believe will be beneficial to both our species and to the galaxy as a whole." The devices were placed before the Council. They were small, unassuming devices that appeared to be no more than simple communicators. But as Rostova explained, their potential was far greater. "These devices," she said, "will allow for instant translation between all languages. They will eliminate the barriers of communication. They will unite us." The Council was stunned. The implications of this technologue were staggering. A galaxy without language barriers, a galaxy where understanding was the norm. "We have come to this galaxy not to conquer, but to build," Rostova stated, her voice ringing with sincerity. "To build bridges, to build connections, to build a better future." The Council slowly began to comprehend the true nature of the Deathworlders. They were not just warriors, they were not just scientists, they were something far more. They were visionaries. A shift occurred in the Council chamber, a tangible sense of understanding, a meeting of minds. The old fears slowly dissipated. The Council began to see the universe through human eyes, to embrace a vision of unity, a future where species could learn and thrive together. Zarkos, initially the most skeptical of the council, was one of the first to speak. His voice, once a grinding rasp of fear, now held a hint of awe. "We were wrong," he admitted, his obsidian form casting a long shadow across the chamber. "We have misjudged you." Ristova's expression remained unchanged, but the subtle crinkling around her eyes gave away the hint of a smile. "We are not perfect," she said. "We have made many mistakes, but we believe in the possibility of redemption." The alliance between the Xylar and the Deathworlders was formed, an unprecedented union of species. The exchange of knowledge, resources, and technology began. The Dauntless became a symbol of cooperation, a beacon of hope for the galaxy. But then, as the alliance began to strengthen, a new threat emerged, far greater than any conflict the Xylar or the Deathworlders had encountered before. A signal, an ancient signal emanating from the depths of space, older than the oldest star systems. A message from beyond, a summons. It was an invitation, a warning, and a promise. The signal resonated within the observation windows of the council chamber, a harbinger of untold horrors, of unimaginable possibilities. The signal was a code, a cipher that the Deathworlders understood. "What is it?" Valka asked, her voice trembling, her form flickering with a mix of fear and curiosity. Ristova's face turned serious. "It's a signal, an ancient distress call. It's been traveling for epochs, since long before the universe's beginning." "And it's directed at us?" "Yes," Ristova responded. "It's a message addressed to humanity, or what was once humanity." The council was stunned. Humanity had a past that stretched beyond the known universe, a past that held secrets that could redefine reality. "It speaks of a conflict," Ristova explained. "A war between forces beyond comprehension. It speaks of beings of pure energy, of worlds consumed by darkness, of the end of all things." She paused, her gaze distant, as if she could see the horrors she was describing. "It speaks of the Great Old Ones." The Great Old Ones were the entities that had once dominated the universe, before an extinction of all life. They were a threat so great that it dwarfed any conflict that the Deathworlders and the Xylar had encountered. "The signal is also a warning," Ristova explained. "We're not alone." The revelation sent a wave of icy dread through the council. They had faced war, conflict, and misunderstanding, but this was an order of magnitude more frightening. "But," Ristova continued, "it is also an opportunity." An opportunity, after the revelation of the threat that hung above them. The signal describes a weapon, a device of incredible power capable of turning the tide of war. It is hidden, lost in the shadows of the galaxy, and it is the only thing capable of stopping them. The council was silent. The fate of the universe had rested on a single device, lost in the vastness of space. "We must find it," Valka stated, her voice regaining its strength. "We must prepare." "It won't be easy," Ristova warned. "The entities that sent the signal also left a trail of destruction, of death, of shadows that can blot out entire star systems." The council was silent. The magnitude of the task was overwhelming. "But the signal also provided a location," Ristova added. The council held its collective breath. "It is said to be within a derelict megastructure," Ristova said. "A monument to a lost civilization, a tomb, and our only hope." The observation windows of the Grand Council chamber offered a view of the stars. The universe was vast, unforgiving, full of both wonder and unimaginable terror. The alliance between the Xylar and the Deathworlders had been forged in the crucible of fear. Now they were ready to face their greatest test yet, a conflict of cosmic proportions, the battle for the fate of all existence. The Deathworlders had come as observers, and in the end they had come to save.